Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Today we have a guest with us. He goes by the name of Justin Knott. And Justin is actually the co-owner of a company that specializes in conducting social media, basically advertising for surgical groups to attract and retain patients. What's great about this interview is that we go into the value of social media, which you guys all know I love to talk about, but we go into what it really looks like when surgical groups try to use it, what it can look like when medical sales reps try to use it, what it can look like when providers as a whole, all the different types of providers, utilize these platforms, these social media platforms, to stay connected, share information, get access to attract patients, or, for example, in the medical sales reps case, get access to the actual providers. We really get into the meat of how it's all working and what the restrictions are and where it's headed. So you're really going to get a lot of pros from this interview. If you're someone that wants to get into the industry, there's something for you to learn. If you're someone that's already in, there's absolutely things for you to learn. And even if you're a provider, you want to tune in. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that bring you different innovations, disrupt the status quo, do things a little differently in the medical sales space. Thank you for listening to this interview. Hey, Justin, how are we doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
So Justin, I'm excited to have you on this show today because you do something a lot like what we do in the social media space, on the LinkedIn platform, in the medical sales space. So before I spoil what it is you do, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce who you are and what you do. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Justin Knott. I am one of the co-owners of a healthcare marketing agency called Entropy Healthcare Marketing. Been around for about 10 years and kind of really our sweet spot is we help multi-location surgical groups attract and retain patients. And so really everything that we do is focused on how do we improve their brand positioning and their rankings, whether it's using SEO or paid advertising around each of their brick and mortar locations to drive more patients through the door for whatever it is that they want to do more of. And we've been really fortunate. We've been doing it for about 10 years. And through that, kind of like what we're going to talk about today, my wife, who owns the agency, and I have spent years and years and years focusing on content development at scale, specifically on LinkedIn, which is kind of the rarity in terms of seeing such tremendous growth right now, especially with businesses. And in doing that, is how do we position ourselves in front of decision makers for practices to obviously close more business for ourselves. So we've been really spent 8 to 10 years at this point, really trying to, as best we can, perfect the art of content development, content aggregation, and evergreen content at scale.
So you'd say that to take everything you just said and kind of dial it down to one sentence, you guys work on getting in front of physicians to help them reach patients through social media.
Exactly. Yeah.
And your focus is also utilizing social media to get access to those potential customers and incentivize them to get trained on how to reach these patients.
Yes, exactly. I think one of the biggest things, especially us starting out and kind of our origin story of being 25, being young and having social media as one of the few advantages in our corner versus a lot of the gray-haired healthcare-focused agencies that had been around for 20 or 30 years. They were a household name. They'd been doing trade shows forever. The CEO could walk into a trade show floor and start shaking the hands of the physicians or the admins. We did not have that going for us. So we needed to figure out what was another way that we could gain exposure and visibility that would set us apart. And at that time, and even still today, if you look at it, there really aren't any healthcare agencies that have invested at the scale that we have in marketing on social media to get in front of physicians. Because a lot of people say, physicians are not engaged, they're not active, they're not proactive on social, and that's just not the case, and it's changing every month.
Yeah, it's changing every month. And I do think within the next 5 years, we're going to see just a flood of physicians on the platform.
For
It's going to
sure.
be kind of a much more of a main thing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what it's like to incentivize these physicians to want to reach out to patients. I mean, when you get in touch with one through all your guys' marketing, what's the reception? Are most physicians saying, "Oh my goodness, I've been seeing it too. I want to be a part of this," or is
Yeah.
there a learning curve that you have to kind of invite them into before they can really adopt wanting to do something like this? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
I think the landscape, fortunately, has changed a lot in terms of the perception of digital marketing, especially in referral dominated spaces historically, like orthopedics and neurosurgery and those types of things. Is why, if I'm a gray haired surgeon that's been on the board for 20 years and I'm booked out for 6 months, why would I invest in digital marketing? And I think what occurred so dramatically and so immediately with COVID closing the doors of a lot of these practices literally overnight, especially if you were deemed elective, reshifted everybody's thought process on how do I create a direct dialogue with patients that's not so reliant on my referrals. And
Absolutely.
that was a huge step forward in getting people to finally listen to what we had been warning them about, that if you wait too long, it may be too late, especially with the verticalization of healthcare systems and large private practices going like the MSO model and buying up other practices and just becoming huge. So they
Right.
have weight against insurance. If you're the 3 to 5 physician group down the road that has ignored digital marketing, and then all of a sudden your referral sources dry up, what do you do now? And it may be too late to try to catch up. And so I think that it did a lot of the work for us. And we had people coming to us and it's like, I got to figure this out. Can you help me?
Wow, I love it. So, do you guys actually go into providers' platform and do it for them, or do you just teach them how to do it and they kind of do it for themselves? I mean, how does it work?
Great question. A little bit of both. I'd say on the technical side, that's where we really come in, both for strategy development, for practice growth, and paid advertising and SEO. Those things are typically, I would not advise a practice or to try to do themselves. But when it comes to content development, that's where we really, collaboration is the name of the game. And we really want to empower the physicians to get involved, get on camera, and start connecting with patients. For a long time, historically, that had been a really difficult and expensive thing to pull off. Like, you got to go to their practice and set up a YouTube studio, or you got to teach them the process, you got to create comfortability. So we set out to build some tools to make it more frictionless. And like, we have a video content creation tool that you literally like click a button, record a 90-second video, it wraps it, adds music, adds a call to action, uploads it to YouTube. So because we struggled to get physicians to buy in to what needs to be done to create
Right,
success on organic
right.
social. But yeah, to answer your question, we want to teach them and empower them. And the most ideal scenario, even for a large organization, is they have somebody in-house that is herding cats, because that's what it's kind of like, herding multiple physicians in a group, as you know,
Sure,
that can
yeah.
sit them down and give them the FAQs, give them the content calendar, and give them the guidance to just start talking on camera. And once they get over that hurdle and just start, everything seems to fall into place after that.
Wow. Okay. So another thing I want to kind of address while you guys are doing that, let's talk a little bit about the actual patients on the platform, because I mean, you're
Mhm.
helping these providers, these practices reach patients on the LinkedIn platform. You know, I don't know how many people think about the LinkedIn platform as being a place to find patients, but obviously it is. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience has been like and what you guys have seen as far as patients, different types of patients are concerned.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think just like a lot of the other platforms, and I think where people struggle and fall short is something that we've done, I think, well, is you've got to decide on kind of what your message is, what your medium is, and what platform you're going to share it on. Everything needs to be designed and built around that. I think too many people spend too much time to be a master of all, like be huge on Facebook, be huge on Instagram, be huge on LinkedIn, be huge on YouTube. And except for the rare few that have celebrity level status because of brand exposure, it's nearly impossible to do that. So you got to take a step back. And then if you're like, if LinkedIn's going to be a main focused medium, everything you build needs to be predicated on how that algorithm works, the ratios of the posts, the timings of the posts, the lengths of the videos on that platform, all of it. So I think that's important to decide is if you're going on LinkedIn, this is what works best. And it's shorter videos. It's interaction in the comments. You can drive a lot of the engagement and connection stuff. So that's what we've seen. I think that's really important to understand first and foremost. Probably on the other side is just like any of the other platforms, when you're trying to engage with patients in particular versus your colleagues, you're really trying to show your care process, the outcomes of that care process, and relatability to the patient, because it's one of the more intimate relationships that you can have in the world is going in and seeing a physician and them diagnosing you and then putting a care plan together. So if you can use LinkedIn as a conduit to position yourself as an authority in your subspecialty, as well as paint yourself as personable and approachable and start the know, like, and trust relationship building on the front end, it's going to go a long, long way, especially local is great. But if you're looking nationally, like I want to be the shoulder surgeon in the country for people that are dealing with X, Y, or Z. That's where just really everything kind of expands out infinitely, because if you get really focused and targeted, you can connect with patients and bring a lot of patients that are willing to travel a very long way to see you.
Sure. So the majority of our audience are in the medical sales space. So they're just like your target audience are surgeons and or just providers that have practices that want to reach out. A lot of our audience are either people that want to get into medical sales, or they want to do more within their own territories and reach their providers. Sure. And what we've seen on LinkedIn a lot, and I want you to speak to this, we've seen that LinkedIn has really become a place for surgeons and different types of providers to share information. Yeah. I mean, they're spreading knowledge amongst each other, and almost creating thought leaders on the LinkedIn platform. Mm-hmm. Now whether that's necessarily translated to what it is outside of LinkedIn, but they've become relatively loud voices on the LinkedIn platform, which has kind of created an opportunity for the medical sales space, aka representatives, to get access to them.
Oh, for sure.
I think this whole also having patients on the platform, like I said, as far as these people are concerned, it's not often thought about. Talk to us a little bit about, you just talked about seeing a lot of patients there. What do you see as far as surgeons seeing information, wanting to share information, versus surgeons wanting to reach more patients? Is it kind of one and the same? Is it different types of customers? Talk to us a little about that.
I definitely say the physicians that are really engaged are still a lot more focused on colleague collaboration and advancements in their space. Like that's definitely, if you look and you see a lot of what's shared, it's about like new surgical techniques, new devices that they're using, cross collaboration with other subspecialists in their space around the country. That definitely, just because of the nature of the beast of what LinkedIn is, and that's their in this world, so to speak. So you do have some that are using it as a patient acquisition well, but I'd say, and to the benefit of med device reps, the ones that are really engaged on there are looking to be engaged in a business manner and share the type of content that's going to push their subspecialty forward, which I think is great for med device people, because that's what you want to be engaging about. Like if it was a platform like Instagram where it's aesthetics people that are just trying to get new patients for their new laser, it's hard to use that as a reach out tool to drum up sales as a med device. But I think that's where the well is deep on LinkedIn and ever growing, especially in the physician space.
Got it. Okay. So going back to the reps, do you think that reps can kind of position their services and products so that patients are pushing providers to pay more attention on the LinkedIn platform?
It's a good question. I think in a roundabout way you could, just kind of through momentum and thought leadership and kind of getting physicians to pay attention. I think where the real advantage lies is to be able to go straight to the source and to build value, relationships, and connections in a real and organic way. directly with the physicians on the platform versus
Got it.
going through the patient as your kind of pioneer, like the pharmaceutical industry does by advertising a pharmaceutical drug. They're trying to get the patient to walk in and talk to their doctor about it.
Right,
The
right.
advantage of LinkedIn is you can go direct to the source of the physicians that are engaged on the platform and start creating value for them through content as a medium.
Got it. You brought something up that I want to ask you about. So you just brought up pharmaceuticals. You know, in all this discussion we've had so far today, we've kind of focused on medical device sales, aka surgeons. But what about the other specialties like pharmaceuticals, like diagnostic, all these different realms of medical sales? What have you seen on the LinkedIn platform as far as reaching those types of providers?
I've seen it work tremendously well in a lot of different use cases. Like we even had an organization that does the vestibular rehabilitation, and they do a lot of training and certification, and they're really well known for that. But they had really developed kind of an out of the box, call it franchise model, where in like 225 square feet, you could put some vestibular equipment and a trained MA in place. So if you're an ENT or a neurologist or an audiologist, it's turning these vestibular patients away because you don't have the ability to treat them. It's a whole lost revenue area in the practice. And we went out and were able to put a really strong social selling and content development process in place. And in 6 months, they closed almost $2.5 million in free
Wow.
sales. And it was all through selling to ENTs and neurologists and boards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be done across the board for a lot of different stuff. And it just, if you really hone in your message, if you really make it organic, and you know who you're positioning, and you use something like a sales navigator to your advantage, you can connect with anybody that you want to on the platform for sure.
I love it. Okay, so let's change gears just a little bit. We've just talked about providers getting access to patients. We've talked about med sales reps getting access to providers. What about the med sales reps that want to enhance their own careers, that want to be more visible to people within their own organization, or maybe turn it into an opportunity in a different organization? How do what do you have to say around what they can do on the LinkedIn platform?
I like firmly believe and have for a very long time that this is one of the most missed and underutilized things that's going on in this space. And that's why I love what y'all are doing. I think historically, med device companies have done an incredible job in onboard training and empowering and continuing education for med device reps on everything except social selling. And it's to their advantage to make them really good at social selling, because they become the brand ambassadors and the multiple for getting all the stuff that a good organization should be doing on social. So it's kind of it's left the med device rep to work with people like you, kind of, because they're at their own device. They got to figure it out on their own. Like, how do I grow my own platform, because Medtronic or whoever it is not teaching me how to do it. And that's all, it always leaves me scratching my head. Why not? But I think it presents a huge opportunity for med device reps, because it is so in its infancy still, to carve out a really powerful platform and thought leadership development to grow their own, not only sales and their own portfolio, but build their resume and leverage that into something a whole lot bigger and better. And it really just starts with following, it's called the 80-20 rule, but I really think it's the 90-10 rule, is developing awesome, consistent content that's focused on one goal. And it's not focused on generating sales. It's focused on value adding to your audience. And that's doing whatever you can to help educate them on how they can improve patient outcomes or what's working in the field, whatever that is. And if you start there and you start with consistency, you really can control your own destiny. It'll probably take some time, 1 to 2 years, to really gain a tremendous momentum, but it really puts you in the driver's seat of your career if you build an audience like that.
Love it. Now, and you mentioned something that I want to ask you about. So you said it takes time, going from complete obscurity on the LinkedIn platform to, I don't know, relative visibility, right? Not rock star status with 40,000 followers, but maybe, I don't know, maybe from 0 followers to, or 300 followers to
the platform.
You said what?
Yeah, where you're actually getting value out of the platform.
Right. How long would you say it takes?
I'd say I'd say 18-ish months on average. It could be less. It could be more like 12 months. It could be more like 2 years. Like I'd say in our journey, it was a 12 to 18-month journey for us to really perfect, I think, content consistency and content development at scale, and finding our groove and what that looks like, and tweaking and tweaking and perfecting and refining. And that's obviously always an ongoing battle, but that's the hardest part, is to learn how to get in front of it, to learn how to create it consistently, and how to not work yourself to the bone in trying to create enough content to be relevant. So I'd say probably 12 to 18 months, a really like kind of focused effort to get to where
Wow.
you want
Wow.
to start on the LinkedIn platform.
So, we've worked with clients that had, I mean, they were active. I'm not going to say they were just complete obscurity, but,
Mhm.
maybe they had, I don't know, 700 followers, 600 followers, and they had very little content put out there, maybe just a couple reshares. And what we've been consistently seeing is maybe 0 to 6 months to go from no one has any idea what you do or who you
Yeah,
are to at least your target audience is aware that you exist,
for
right?
sure. And
And
I
they're
would
engaging
say,
with you.
and I'd say that's, excuse me, the advantage of working with somebody like yourself is you don't have to figure out what the
Right.
content development process needs to look like. And that took us a long time. And even after we had moved into a really good position on LinkedIn, like even starting our podcast, for instance, like it took me like 6 months just to figure out how to get like under a week in post-production time and schedule
Right.
guests. It just takes a long time if you're doing it on your own. That's the advantage of
Right.
bringing somebody in who's already figured out the mousetrap and can guide you into creating the right content, developing your message, connecting with people consistently, especially with everything that's changed and evolved over the last year with the LinkedIn algorithm.
Sure. Sure. All right. I got one last audience I want you to address. So I told you before that we also have people that want to get into the industry, listen to this program.
Yep.
And, we work with clients to, help them get some visibility to potentially get reached out for an interview or potentially be seen by a hiring manager. What do you say to that? And I want you to think of it from this perspective. Think of it someone that has never been in medicine. They might not even have sales experience. They're just maybe a customer service employee. They've been working 3 or 4 years somewhere, and they're saying, you know what? I want to get into the medical sales space. What would you advise them on getting more visibility and coming off authentic and potentially being seen by someone that is a decision maker?
That's a really good question. First, I would spend some time and effort. Obviously, you need to really invest a good amount of time in getting your profile squared away. It's got to look really, really strong, and you've got to check all the boxes on there. So I think making sure that that's really good, and I think being very thoughtful in terms of the value set that you do currently have. Like if it's a customer service rep or whatever it is, that means you probably have strong communication skills. Like use some of those things to your advantage. You may not be able to talk as an expert to that specific type of device or what you want to do, but I think using the skill sets that you do have to your advantage to create good content, because I think it matters less about the message and more about you're showing that you have the ability to kind of develop strategy and execute in terms of building an audience on that on LinkedIn. But I think the other side too, and it's what we did to find success, especially when we were trying to figure out what the whole thing looks like, is seek out mentors on the platform that are having success, med device reps that have invested in content, and listen to their origin story and heed their advice in terms of how they got to where they are. And I think that will go a long way because it'll help you build your network and potentially give you a leg up from a reference standpoint if you develop a strong relationship. But most people are very willing to share how they've come to success on LinkedIn. And so I think if I'm a customer service rep, I've redone my profile and building some content, and I really want to land a med device job, I would start finding people that are having success on LinkedIn and start engaging them with a conversation. Like, how do I get to where you're at? How do I get my first job as a
Sure.
service rep? And that's what I
Yeah.
would encourage is there are 90% of people are willing to take at least 15 minutes of their day and share some advice. And that I think people ignore and skip over way too often.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna switch gears again. So with going after your target audience with providers,
Mhm.
what would you say the biggest challenges have been? And it could be anything from the challenges with getting them to see why it's valuable, from the challenges of what you see providers consistently stumbling with when they're trying to actually make it happen. I mean, what challenges are you guys actually seeing?
I say from the on the outreach front in terms of like actually like connecting and turning that conversation into say something offline that actually generates in a sale is and it's what everybody has been struggling with before even the rise of social media is physicians get hammered more than anybody else. They have more noise around them than probably anybody else because of the amount of income that is generated by most of the surgeons. So it's hard to differentiate yourself and cut through the noise to get them to be willing to listen. That
Got it.
you're saying something different, and you're not there
Sure.
to use and abuse their time because that's
Sure.
their most valuable asset, obviously. So I think that's probably the biggest uphill battle, just like any other meeting. And if you're a med device rep trying to like cold turkey walk into an office and get past the gatekeeper and engage in a conversation with a physician, they probably had 30 other people do that in that week alone. Like, nope, we're good.
Right.
And
Right.
knocking on their virtual door, so to speak, on LinkedIn is how do you kind of walk, crawl, run in terms of developing your relationship that's one-to-one with physicians on the platform that are willing to listen. I think it's harder early on. And then once you get to like, say the position that my wife has gotten, then it's just the sheer magnitude of your influence makes it a little bit easier from an outreach perspective. Like I've obviously got something important to say. There's a lot of people listening.
Right.
And so I
Right.
think I mean, eventually that's the goal to get to, but I think early on it really is. And I mean, being vulnerable, being personable, physicians are people too, and not going straight to the sale and focusing on building content and the sales will come as a result.
Okay. How long have you guys been on the LinkedIn platform?
I mean, really since the beginning. I mean, I'd say 10ish years or so that we've been on it, but it's
So
really
you got
been, go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. It's really been what?
It's really been a 3 or 4 year journey in terms of like turning our sites and saying, how are we going to use LinkedIn to be a springboard to grow our business? Then that's been, I'd say, a 4-ish year, maybe 5 at the most, 4 to 5 year journey for us.
Excellent. And now, so you've been there when LinkedIn was LinkedIn, and
Oh
when
yeah.
LinkedIn became Microsoft's LinkedIn. I mean,
Yep.
and you've seen the features where we could do stories, and you've seen the features removed where we can no longer do stories. I mean, you've seen things come and go.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about how do you stay in front of all those changes that affect how the algorithm works? What's what keeps you guys going steady and growing clients steadily in light of all of these changes that are happening all the time?
I think, yeah, and one of the biggest shifts that we've seen, especially in thought leadership development, has been probably the most recent downshift that LinkedIn has done in terms of connection request development. Going from being able to send 1,000 a week to 50 a week is a
Right.
cataclysmic shift, especially when you're trying to build huge audiences at scale and then use that to create direct message outreach sequences and all of that stuff. That's a huge, huge shift. So I think it's um, you got to stay up on it, but you got to also continue to use, I think, automation and technology to your advantage, because I think that there's technology out there that stays up with the times. And if you're smart enough to invest some time and some resources into learning the cause and effect of whatever it's come out on LinkedIn and how you can use automation to your advantage to still stay on top of it without killing yourself, that's probably been the biggest thing for us. Is things are evolving constantly on the platform, but there's still a ton of tools out there like Phantom Buster and those types of things that can do a tremendous amount of stuff for you without getting you into trouble, so to speak. So I think that's probably
Right.
the biggest thing is leveraging technology to your advantage, and being willing to move, especially if you look at it purely from a sales standpoint, is you've got to be able to, can't have all your chips in one basket on LinkedIn, because they're going to continue to monetize that platform just like Facebook did. And so things are going to continue to change. And with that, you have to understand that means probably cold email will need to come into the equation. Facebook group
Gotcha.
outreach will need to
Yeah.
come into the equation, like other you have to have a multi-pronged approach because LinkedIn's going to
Sure.
continue to throttle everything down and move more focus onto their ads platform. It's just going to happen over time. There's no way around it.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. Okay, so last question I have for you. Actually, it's not the last question, but the last, I guess, concept I want to address for you,
Mm-hmm.
Justin, is I love what you guys are doing. You guys are a power couple that has some new life you've brought into the world, and you've been able to run this great organization that's doing amazing things. What help? Give us a little bit about what keeps you guys focused. Why are you guys so passionate about this? What helps you just on a daily basis stick to the plan, stick to the execution? What helps you make that happen?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's definitely been an evolving journey now having a 1.5-year-old and Kelly and I really being it in terms of the business for so long. And then her taking a step back. She had a hyperemesis during her pregnancy. So that was really tough on her. She spent a lot of time throwing up, which makes it really difficult to work. And that was a tough journey to watch her to go from running the business day to day with me to just physically not being able to do it. And then making a decision to step back and do one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. And that's being mom and raising a little one, which I have tremendous respect for her and what she's been able to do. But I think it really, for us, it's really motivating after all the time and effort to put in to be able to have somewhat of a lifestyle business. And I do get to spend a lot more time with my daughter, and I get to get up with her every single morning and keep her in the mornings. I get to clock out a little bit earlier than most people. And so it's created a lifestyle business for us that really allows her and I to spend a lot more time with our daughter, which keeps our cup filled and motivated on the work side too. And it's been a journey for Kelly. I mean, it's a tough market for finding good staff across the board. And that goes for nannies as well. And we've spent like 9 months to get a good
that
nanny.
life. Yes.
So Kelly can get back to work. And it's been honestly a struggle of a journey because she's been ready to get back and we haven't been able to find the right person to get her back at some level. But probably the other big motivator is, as we've continued to grow, is the building of the company culture and investing as our roles have shifted from execution to manager, and we've grown more and more employees in our organization. That's probably one of the most rewarding things for me, is seeing company culture take shape and seeing people love what they do, especially if they've left a rough situation and come into a situation with ours. And that's probably the most rewarding thing for me over the last year is getting people on board and seeing them start to work on their own and build their departments on their own and all of that stuff. And that's been really exciting.
That is awesome. That is exciting. All right, we're gonna come to a close here, Justin, and I'm gonna ask you just a few questions, and you just give me the best answers. You have about 5 seconds to answer. Give me the best answers that come to mind. You ready?
Yep.
All right. Best book you've read in the last 6 months?
Ooh, Crossing the Chasm.
Man, you are the second person.
Oh, really?
Talking about I'm gonna get it. You are the second person that's brought this book up,
really
and I keep hearing about it. I'm gonna get. I love it. Crossing the Chasm. All right. Best movie in the last 6 months?
I don't know. That's a good question. There hasn't been a lot of good ones that have come out recently. I'll have to pass. Let me think on that for just a second.
You have to pass on that one. All right. All right. Best meal you've had in the last 6 months?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say, I can't remember the name of the restaurant off the top of my head, but it's the son of the Euro Dreams of Sushi guy, the Netflix documentary guy. His other son started in an Osaka restaurant in Manhattan, and my wife and I went for our anniversary, where it's just like him and like 10 people, and he's doing it all by hand. And that was one of the more remarkable meals of my whole entire life.
I'm going. You sold me on that one. All right. And then the last one, best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
Ooh, good question. I would say going to Sedona, Arizona was an awe-inspiring experience that came with the Grand Canyon while we were there, but going with my wife and my daughter and my in-laws and getting to spend 5 or 6 days between the Grand Canyon and seeing Sedona was an experience I will never forget.
Beautiful. Justin, it was great having you on the show. We love what you're doing out there. And I'm so happy to even be sharing this kind of space with you and your company. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And that was Justin Knott with Intrapi Healthcare Marketing. Doing some cool things out there. And as we discussed, I mean, social media has become such an important part of business that it's even entered healthcare. And healthcare is starting to really pay attention and utilize it. And you can too. In fact, if you're someone listening to this episode today and you're thinking to yourself, I really want to get into medical sales. I don't know if I want to be a pharmaceutical sales rep or a medical device sales rep or a diagnostic sales rep or a dental sales rep. You've been hearing all sorts of things and you really know you want to work in healthcare and you want to sell in healthcare, but you're not sure where to go. Then you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com. Select Attain Medical Sales Role and schedule some time with us and let us help you get you on the right track and get you into a position. And if you're someone that knows exactly where you want to go, but you're not getting those interviews or you're not getting past the second and third round in those interviews, then again, visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, fill out the information and submit it and schedule some time with us. For those of you that are medical sales reps and you're on the road right now and you're listening to this episode, you're thinking to yourself, the year is coming to a close. I wonder if there's more I can do to improve my ranking, potentially get to Winner's Circle or President's Club, or hit that goal attainment that I'm always dreaming about. Well, guess what? Dream no more. Go to evolveyoursuccess.com and select Improve Sales Performance. Click on the Medical Sales Program and let's have a conversation so we can help you get to where you want to be before December. There is still time. One thing that we know in this industry, regardless which one you're in, yes, there are many fields with long sales cycles, but a lot can happen relatively quickly if you get up, do the right things, and execute every single day. So, as always, keep coming back and listening to more episodes from the Medical Sales Podcast, and tune in next week for another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.